Well, I want to welcome you tonight, and I want to thank you for coming out and listening tonight. We're going to have one little story. I don't know how much reading we'll end up doing tonight, but remember, the Bible, I believe it says in Luke chapter 14, I believe it is, there's a story of a man that had a great supper. We all probably have heard of the story. You know, when I see that word great story, I think of a man that took the time to make a great supper. I'm talking about he went all out to make this great supper, to be able to accomplish what he wanted to accomplish. And many was invited. It said many. So you would think that that would be more than just 3 or 4 or 5, but many was invited. The meal was ready. I mean, the meal was spread out on the table. I mean, I imagine there was probably everything under the sun that you was waiting on to be able to eat everything that was there. But there was 3 examples of no-shows. And you remember that all 3 of them had one consent. I'm not reading it out of the Bible. I'm going by memory, but one of them had, or all 3 of them had one consent. That meant they all had basically the same excuse. Now, 2 of them used the words, have me excused. 2 of them used the words, have me excused. Well, we could probably say that was an excuse because he used the word excused. And then there was one that just outwardly said, I cannot come. I just can't come. I think that one was the one that got married, that he had a new bride and he just couldn't come. So the other 2, they had bought a piece of ground and they had bought some oxen and they had to go test them, and the man wanted to go to see what his ground looked like. You know, so see, we always see excuses just about all the time. And here the master is highly upset. I could understand if I invited somebody to my house and they didn't come or they didn't call. That would be so embarrassing for knowing that somebody wouldn't come. So, you know, his attitude was he sent the servant to go get more. Just go get more. But, you know, the ones that servant went to go get, he went and got the poor. He went and got the maimed and the halt and the blind. Now, did this master know the one that was poor and the maimed and the halt and the blind? Did he actually have knowledge of them? Now, these other 3 men, they were invited. So did the master know them? Or did the master just say, I want them 3 to come? But when they turned him down, he told him to go get more. And I believe the Bible says that they came to eat. Them people that was the maimed and the halt and the blind and the poor had no reason to turn down the master's food. They had no reason to turn it down. Because a poor person might not get to eat today. A maimed person might not have nobody to cook food for them today. A halt person might not be able. They might be crippled, and a blind person might not be able to see where the food is. But yet this servant, he goes out. They came and they eat. But you know what? I think that the master looked around and said, you know, we got all this food here. And he sent that servant out. And he says, go and get the ones in the highways and the hedges. Go and get them. Go and bring them. Go and harvest them. Go and bring them back. Maybe that they will be willing to come to this great supper that I have prepared, that I have took the time and the funds and the money and the labor and all of this stuff so I could have myself a supper that I could be proud of. You know, there's plenty of room. I think the Bible even said that he wanted his house to be full. How many people do you think is even thinking about the place of heaven being full? But yet there's going to be some people that God wanted in heaven, but they're not going to be there because they made an excuse. Ain't that sad? Here it is. God has got something prepared in a place that is called heaven for eternity, for everyone that would be electable to come to that supper. God has took time to make the food and make the opportunity for people to come, and there's still room and there's still food to eat, but yet a lot of people will say, I didn't know nothing about it. I didn't get no invitation. Do you think Jesus sends out written invitations? Did this master here in this story right here, did he send written invitation, or did he go and tell his servant, I want you to go get them? And when there was more room, he goes and gets the lame, the halt, and the blind, and the poor to come. And you know what? I think they're actually eating on the dinner during this time. And the master looks around and says, you know what? We got a lot of leftovers. We got a lot of things that the people can still eat. And he sent that servant one more time to go out into the highways and the byways. I think the Bible talks about the highway and the hedges. Did that master know the people that was in the highways and the hedges? No. Did he know the people that was the lame, poor, and the blind and the halt? Did he know them? I don't think that he did. But they at least was willing to show up. They was at least willing to come to the supper. And I'm seeing that the Lord is got a supper that he's fixing to prepare. And how many people's not going to show up? How many people's not going to take the time to come to his place and to dine on the food? There's plenty of room. You know, God is preparing heaven for the people that he knows it is his, but he also is preparing heaven for the whosoever. You know what? There's not going to be no empty mansions in heaven. God already knows who's going to be there. He knows who's going to show up. God knows all things. It's true. But you know, I'm so thankful that the Lord used the word whosoever. I'm glad that God didn't make me a robot, that he programmed me from my mother's womb in order to do this. I want to think that I had something to do with that. Now, does he ultimately save? Yes, he does. Does he know all things? Yes, he does. But why in the world would the Lord use the word whosoever? Is that just a mistake that he used the word whosoever? No, I think that he gives man a choice to come to the supper. And there was people that didn't come to the supper because they made their own selection, that they wanted to go see their ground. They wanted to go test their oxen. They wanted to go and lay up with that new wife. And we wonder why the master got a little bit upset and angry. But notice there's a verse in here where it says in verse 23, and the Lord said unto the servant, go out into the highways and hedges and compel them to come in, that my house may be full. He wanted it filled. He just didn't want it full. He wanted it filled. He wanted it filled with people because he took the time to make a great supper. And that's all the Lord's doing today. He's preparing a supper for the people that he is calling. And you know what he's doing today? He's calling. He's calling. How many people's tuning in to listen? Notice verse 24. For I say unto you. Now who is he talking about? I believe he's talking to the servant. Because that's the only one that's really listening to the master speak anyway. Think about it. Only the servant is the one that is listening. All these other people are still fasting or still eating on the food and all. They're not paying any attention. He tells the servant, for I say unto you that none of those men which were bidden shall taste of my supper. They're not going to even get to have a smell of my supper. Here's the question. What excuse will you use? What excuse are you going to tell the Lord? You going to tell the Lord, oh, Lord, I didn't know. I didn't know you had a supper. I didn't know you was preparing a place in heaven, even though that Brother Ken come out here constantly every week and use the John 14, let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. Does that say that he's making the supper for us there? People, he's preparing more than the supper. He's preparing a heavenly place for you and I. What excuse will you use? If you are making excuses today, what excuse will you think of? Will you tell the Lord, Lord, I didn't know? No, you know why that's not going to work? Because I consider myself a servant of the Lord. And I come out here constantly, many times a week, to make a message, hoping that maybe it would instill a message into somebody, that they will be able to know that the Lord is making a meal and making a place. And he's sending out the servant to go and invite and compel. That's what he said right here. He said, go into the highways and hedges and compel them to come. That word compel means to beg. Sometimes I feel like that's what I do. I beg. What excuse will you use? That's the question. Thank you for watching.